I'm just really surprised at the timing of all of this in the middle of a run up to a general election, when Labour are hoping to be the next government. Here was an opportunity, it seems to me, for them to show they could be fair and even-handed. It was embarrassing and humiliating, I felt, for Miss Abbott to be bobbing up and down 46 times to speak about her own treatment, whilst her party leader was at the dispatch box. And certainly, as I've said, a lot of my friends and colleagues felt humiliated for her. And that feeling of hurt and humiliation among elements of the black electorate, I'm sure will now be enhanced by the fact that she's been allowed back into the party, but has been told through a process that none of us are au fait with. There's been no proper explanation. You'll notice, and this is why I think this is a difficult area for the Labour Party, when the decision about Angela Rayner was made yesterday, within a very short period of time, the party leader was saying how pleased he was the investigation was not continuing. When the whip was restored, we heard nothing from any of the senior members of the Labour Party about their pleasure or delight in having her return. And we've had radio silence this morning in relation to whether or not she has been banned from standing in a constituency where she has 30,000 odd majority.
Now speak with Martin Forde KC, who 2 years ago finished his report into racism, discrimination and anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. He concluded that Labour was, and I quote, in effect operating a hierarchy of racism or discrimination. He also found that some of the attitudes expressed towards Diane Abbott and other black, Asian and minority ethnic MPs in private WhatsApp messages among staffers represented overt and underlying racism and sexism. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
What do you make of this decision to restore the whip to Diane Abbott, but not allow her to stand? I mean, she has confirmed that that is the case. She won't be allowed to stand for the Labour Party. What do you make of that?
It strikes me as utterly shambolic for the whip to be restored yesterday and then for us to get this news moments ago. And in terms of media management, I think for a shadow cabinet minister such as Mr. Streeting not to be aware that this had happened, and certainly there's no transparency around process, is deeply disturbing. It's quite clear from a legal perspective that the Labour Party is, in a sense, a club, and it can determine who's a member and who isn't. But I find it astonishing that the process doesn't appear to be more transparent. And for a very long time, I've been saying, along with others, that what was said was said. I'm not an apologist for what was said at all. Rightly condemned, swift apology. Why has it taken so many months to investigate? I think the impact that I've been made aware of on the certainly the Afro-Caribbean vote is tremendous. I get WhatsApp messages predominantly from professional black and Asian women who are utterly dismayed by the way that Miss Abbott's been treated.
And this is one of the big questions, I think. I mean, we've gone over with Wes Streeting some of the details of the process. I won't revisit those with you because that really is for Labour to answer to. But we were speaking to a former Labour councillor before, now an independent, who said that she believes it is racist. There is racism in the way that Diane Abbott has been treated differently, she believed, to some of the white male Labour MPs who've also had to apologise for things they've said. Would you agree with that?
It's really difficult to get any kind of qualitative assessment of quite what's going on. I think what's dismayed her supporters and her friends and potentially her constituency members, the length of the process. Hackney's been without an effective MP for 13 months, which one would hope a Democratic Party would want to resolve that position extremely swiftly. I think this could have been dealt with certainly within a month or so. And one of the problems we identified when I did the report was the length of time that processes take. There's definitely seems to be a disparity in treatment in terms of swift apologies from certain people being enough and the whip never being withdrawn. I think there was an MP who described Rishi Sunak as having blood on his hands. We had the position with Mr. Ali in Rotherham. And therefore, I think the party needs to be very aware of the fact that this is perceived as something which was very personal to Diane Abbott, not part of a due process. I am not quite sure what the process is for telling somebody the whip's been restored, but they can't stand as an MP. One would have thought, as she'd been selected by her constituency, that they would have the democratic final say
Yeah.
in who their member of parliament was likely to be.
And this is where this strays into what has been very difficult territory, I think, in this story, which is the element of the left wing, the left wing politics, which Sir Keir Starmer has made a point repeatedly of every campaign trip so far of rejecting, of saying this is a changed Labour Party. And when he says that, we know that he is referring to the left and Jeremy Corbyn and the time when Diane Abbott was very much at the top of the party not so long ago. Is that a big element in this decision? Is this actually about Keir Starmer trying to get rid of the left wing of the party, and that's why the process has dragged on, and that's why it feels like something strange has happened here in a way?
Well, he's been scrupulous to say, and I think he said last week this would be concluded by the 4th of June, that he's had no dealings, indirect or direct, with the process. And I suppose one has to accept that's the case. He doesn't micromanage every disciplinary decision, but he will have advisors and he will have those in charge of the disciplinary process. And I'm just really surprised at the timing of all of this in the middle of a run up to a general election, when Labour are hoping to be the next government. Here was an opportunity, it seems to me, for them to show they could be fair and even-handed. It was embarrassing and humiliating, I felt, for Miss Abbott to be bobbing up and down 46 times to speak about her own treatment, whilst her party leader was at the dispatch box. And certainly, as I've said, a lot of my friends and colleagues felt humiliated for her. And that feeling of hurt and humiliation among elements of the black electorate, I'm sure, will now be enhanced by the fact that she's been allowed back into the party, but has been told through a process that none of us are au fait with. There's been no proper explanation. You'll notice, and this is why I think this is a difficult area for the Labour Party, when the decision about Angela Rayner was made yesterday, within a very short period of time, the party leader was saying how pleased he was the investigation was not continuing. When the whip was restored, we heard nothing from any of the senior members of the Labour Party about their pleasure or delight in having her return. And we've had radio silence this morning in relation to whether or not she has been banned from standing in a constituency where she has 30,000 odd majority. And I think the other issue in terms of the perception, because I was careful with my words, of a hierarchy in terms of dealing with complaints around race or religious beliefs, it's not only the length of time that it's taken, but what is perceived to be the very unfair and unnecessarily humiliating processes that Diane Abbott has gone through. And I think that will be a real problem. There's some very angry people out there.
I just want to end by, I know that you're in touch with Diane, and I won't ask you to divulge your confidences. We are, of course, in touch with her too, to invite her onto the programme to give her own take on what's happened. But in your view, did she want to stand again in that seat? Did she want to find a way to stand aside, but, you know, in a way of her choosing? Where does she go from here, and sort of how is she feeling at the moment?
I mean, I haven't spoken to her for the last few days. I've been in touch with her through intermediaries, because when I found the whip had been restored, I obviously had media requests, and I didn't want to cause any difficulties for her or for the party, what is a very delicate time. My impression is that if she was going to go, she wanted to go on her own terms. She's very much loved by her constituents, and she is a very, very important historical figure as far as the black community are concerned. You may not agree with her politics, everything that she's said, and she's possibly misspoken on a few occasions. And when I did the report, there were hugely critical comments made about her by party members. I described them as exhibiting visceral disgust. She, I think, got 10 times as many abusive messages on social media as any other MP in the 2017 campaign. She really has been through the ringer in terms of her profile. And I think what the black community were hoping for was that the Labour Party would actually kind of reach out to her, particularly following the Hester remarks, and look after her. And what is now perceived is that far from that, the humiliation has been going on for 13 or 14 months, and she's now being banned she tells us, and we'll have to wait and see what the party's response is, from standing in a constituency where she's been Member of Parliament since 1987. And I think it's a terrible shame. It's an ignominious end to a very significant career.
Martin Forde KC, thank you for joining us on the programme this morning.